Good morning, listeners. Welcome to the Education Showroom's weekly podcast. And I'm delighted to introduce Belinda today, who's our special guest. You're going to hear a lot more about Belinda, how she helps schools and maths every day, and about her wonderful organisation. And for context, Belinda is the Managing Director of MindSpark. So listeners, thank you so much for joining us today, whether you're on Spotify or whether you are on YouTube. And of course, you're here to listen and to join and to engage with us today in a particular topic. So no doubt you'll have some really interesting reasons as to why you've chosen to listen to this podcast. The title is Why is it essential for schools and multi-academy trusts to adopt an executive function approach to learning? So why is it essential for schools and multi-academy trusts to adopt an executive function approach to learning? That's what we're covering today. First and foremost, and most importantly, Belinda, good morning. Welcome to the Education Showroom podcast. And first of all, are you enjoying the sun like I am today? The sun is out here in Norfolk.
I know, well, it's pretty sunny down here. I'm in London. It's been sunny and frosty, but that's quite nice to have that mix. So no, it's been sunny too.
Lovely. I love it. And just to set the scene for the audience today, for your podcast listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself. So a little bit about your background, your history, your career. Just set the scene for us a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So I've done lots of different sort of education degrees. I sort of in an education where I started doing a zoology degree. I actually did an environmental science master's in my 20s. And most recently, I went back and did another master's in psychology, really underpinning a lot of the work we're doing in MindSpark. And I've always had a really strong interest in psychology, how the mind influences our behavior and what we can do to help us all be, achieve in our own different ways. So I've always had a strong interest in coaching. And I've been working with MindSpark now for 6 years. And now the director, and we're a social enterprise taking understandings from psychology and neuroscience and how you can take that into different organizations to help really unpick what is behind behavior and helping people achieve in learning, well-being, and they are also the skills for life that we need to succeed.
I love that. That's fantastic. And I guess the lovely kind of dovetail into the first question, and it's actually when you and I were talking a few weeks ago, my first question to you is, well, what is an executive function? That's what we're talking about today, of course. Why it's so important, but I think it's important that we start with the what, and then we'll cover the why. So what is an executive function?
Yeah, well, so it is not the links to executives in terms of it's the part of our brain that is controlling, that we have most agency over, that controls our actions, behaviors, and thoughts. And so executive function skills are cognitive skills, and they predominantly reside in our prefrontal cortex, which is the most developed part of our brain. And they cover things like metacognition, so our awareness of our own thought processes, but how we regulate our emotions, how we manage our impulses. So really important impulse control, taking a moment to think and process what we're doing before we instantly do or say something. But it also includes working memory, our ability for cognitive flexibility, which is so vital in problem solving. And then, interestingly, it also has all of these goal-directed behaviors. So how we can imagine a future, what we want to achieve, and then how we actually break that down, manage our time, plan, prioritize. So we use a language of 11 executive function skills, which is based a lot on Peg Dawson's work, there's a lot of research out there to read about hers, but they are the building blocks of how we self-regulate, and they are important in so many different aspects of our life, both as adults and obviously for children going through their education.
Really interesting. Very interesting indeed. And again, beautifully dovetailed in. Anyone who thinks we've planned this, Belinda. Now we've focused on the what. Let's talk about within a school or a multi-academy trust. So you work with a vast amount of schools different types of schools, different locations,
Yeah.
person, online, and the same with multi-academy trusts as well. What challenges, let's start with the challenges, I think, this morning. What challenges do you see? What challenges do the school and leaders articulate to you? What do you observe? What do you hear? What do you see on a regular basis
Yeah.
around this concept of executive function challenges within schools and maths?
Yeah, well, so because we are drawing on our executive function skills, they underpin so much of behavior. It's important in both learning, but also in well-being. It's also very related to any diagnosis, SEND. So if someone does have a diagnosis, be that an ADHD or an autism diagnosis or dyslexia, so often there are pronounced challenges with their executive function skills. So one of the challenges we hear is there's increasing complex, diverse needs in classrooms. And the teachers in the classrooms, whilst they want to or are expected to differentiate the learning, sometimes don't have quite the skills or the training to be able to do that. And understanding the executive function skills can give a language and an understanding and a strength-based, proactive way of putting strategies in place. And what's really useful with that is because all children are drawing on their executive function skills, you can be supporting all children and the SEND children with their with needs in the classroom. So that's really a need that comes up so much, is that diverse needs in the classroom and the desire and requirement to have training. I think there's also executive function skills can really, or challenges are so interwoven with mental health. And in fact, we're doing a really exciting project with the Maudsley charity in South London at the moment, which is targeted on using our executive function coaching approach, which we're calling resilience coaching, to support young people. Because if you're teaching resilience, and it's so important for children, but what does that actually mean? And these executive function skills that I mentioned are the building blocks to resilience. So rather than just expecting it, let's have really specific conversations about how we can be supporting children to be developing these important skills. So these are some of the challenges that really, we're hearing very regularly. And also these challenges, be it with EF skills, so often underpin challenges with attendance. We're doing a really exciting project, which again, we've just received some funding to do a research project working closely with the primary school, how we can use this approach to coordinate with both the parents, with the teachers, with the school on understanding what are the barriers to attendance and how can we put strategies in place. So it spans quite a lot of challenges that we hear a lot.
Really interesting. Just staying on the same question, because A, I'm fascinated, and B, this is I love this. So just staying on the same question, I'm just going to reverse it a little bit.
Yeah.
You receive an email from the school or MAP for the very first time. You receive a call, or through your research work, whatever the medium may be. A school or a MAP will say to you, Belinda, we've got a challenge in what are they typically, what have they understood, learned, seeing, observed, which would then prompt them to contact yourself and your company and say, we need coaching, support, advice, input, can you come and help us? What does that kind of look like on the face of it?
So I think, some of the schools are already interested in concepts such as metacognition. Yeah. They're interested in self-regulated learning. They're perhaps already in the primary schools talking about zones of regulation, or they're looking at these, but they want something that can bring it all together and bring in someone external, sometimes to build on the work they're already doing. So building in that expertise to help, to bring a framework, to, keep the momentum going. So quite often, schools and leaders are aware of what's out there, but don't quite know how to put it into practice.
Yeah. Now, and going back to your previous comment, behavioural challenges, which we the education showing a lot more about. More and more leaders are observing more challenging behaviour, unfortunately. And you've also mentioned challenging attendance as well, with
Yeah.
experiencing dips in certain times of the year, or dips across the board across the year, whatever that may look like. So lots of different kind of areas here.
Yeah, and I think one other theme that comes up a lot, and I'm sure this must come up in your discussions, is how, children are in an increasingly digital world with increasing AI, obviously, is such a topic that's being discussed all over. And there's some really interesting research that is out there at the moment from the Centre of the Early Childhood. And it is really in an increasing machine learning world where you can have the content, the click of a few buttons. It's the human skills that are really going to give us the human skills are going to give us our advantage. And those are our executive function skills. So this is what we're going to be needing to teach our children for the adults of tomorrow.
Well, absolutely. And transitioning to the next question is, what are schools and maths, or what can schools and maths do for themselves internally to enhance, to optimize, to improve, to do more, to, like you said, to refine and to implement and to, improve 5% in a particular area or 10%? What can they do internally themselves, which you would recommend they consider?
Yeah, well, what is fantastic is this is a real evidence-informed approach that we're building on. So we are building on many different areas of research, and I think this is particularly useful where we sit. Is we build on the clinical research of executive functions, where people are put in, fMRI scanners, and what is going on a really neuronal, like what is going on the brain level, neuroscience level. But we're also really building on research that's coming from classroom-based education. So directly answering that, really engaging with the research that's already out there. There is a fantastic body of research on metacognition and self-regulated learning, and those are really the classroom-based aspects of the research. And I would point anyone particularly into the new Education Endowment Foundation guidance, which has come up. There is some really, really key aspects, so sharing that across the school. I will just say we did a research project as MindSpark with the Education Endowment Foundation project just a year ago, which was really, really fantastic. So I point anyone in that direction, and just their pointers. One of them, for example, is bringing metacognitive talk into classrooms. And what that means is really explicitly talking about the thought processes that learners are going through as they learn. And that teaching children alongside what to learn, teaching them how to learn, and being really explicit about it. So that aspect, I think also there is so much fantastic research on executive function skills. So Adele Diamond is one of the leading lights. Russell Barkley has also written a lot on executive functions. Peg Dawson, who I mentioned earlier, she's got a lot of books. So I think engaging in some of that research is really helpful. One of the aspects that's really important when we start working with schools is what we call executive function literacy. And that's becoming familiar and using the language of the executive function skills I mentioned earlier. So talking about cognitive flexibility, talking about metacognition, talking about working memory, and bringing that language in the classroom. And it is so valuable because it's a language you can have talking directly to any of the pupils. You can use the same language talking to colleagues, and you can use the same language talking to parents. And because you're not talking about a problem behavior, you're talking about a skill and how can we build the skill. It takes the blame and shame out of a conversation, and it automatically makes it a more coaching conversation about, let's work out together what's going on here and how we can help you if the same situation happens in the future. So bringing those in, and I think coaching is really quite a golden thread of a lot of the work we do, because how we're facilitating behavior change is through conversations and through being there. And another thing which I think is really useful. It's just how conversations are so important. So for everyone being aware of when they are being directive in their conversation, where they are taking a coaching approach, where you're building that capacity for metacognition and thought and learning, or when they might be rescuing and sort of doing it for a child. And there might be times where you do need to be more directive or you need to be rescuing, but what can you do, to be moving into that coaching approach, asking open-ended questions, getting, children to think for themselves. And what also is very interesting, I'm doing we've been working with a big secondary school for 3 years, embedding this approach, and they are now moving to how can we have coaching conversations throughout the school. It's a longer term project, and we're building in concepts of how this can also be working through instructional coaching. So how conversations are being used to support teachers doing peer coaching on their teaching and learning practices. So it's bringing all of these conversations together.
That's really interesting. And some listeners, I'm sure you've found it invaluable, some great recommendations, some hints. But I think, I'm sure you'll agree, Belinda, it all starts with the research. So, you said some fabulous people that you've kindly shared names of. Or as the young people say, name dropped. Names of some great research. But of course, people can come to yourself as well and ask for your help, guidance, input, expertise, what you think, what you do, bounce ideas off you as well, which is great. So yeah, I hope listeners, you found that particular section of what you can do within your schools very, very useful. Belinda, what I would love to do now is talk a little bit about how yourself and your organisation at MindSpark can actually help the listeners today. So heads, deputies, assistant heads, classroom practitioners, SENCOs, everyone listening to this podcast, what type of help, support, services could you provide these leaders in the schools with, please?
Yeah, well, at MindSpark, we know that every school is different. They have different challenges, different strengths. They're in a different stage in their journey. So everything we do is really, really bespoke to each organisation. I think that's really, really important. We take a whole school approach because that is where we're going to have the most impact. And there's lots of different aspects of how that takes place. So we've worked with many schools where we've done a whole day, whole school inset, and that is really helpful to start shifting the whole culture of a school step by step. So obviously we provide training. We work really closely, I said, to identify what are the challenges for each individual school. So any support is really, really meeting their needs and what works for them. So we really offer, it's more of a consultancy to make it very bespoke. We have a fantastic coach training model, and we are very excited that we have just got that accredited by the Association for Coaching, which is brilliant. So now coaches who do attend that, it's delivered over 2 modules, so it's over 3 to 4 months, depending on when the breaks spot, but it's really a fantastic training, and that helps both be able to deliver one-to-one coaching sessions or group work, but actually also we quite often have senior leaders coming on this coach training because it gives such a great skill of how you can embed this across the whole school. And yeah, so those are what we offer. We're both evidence informed in the content, but also we're very research led. So we do conduct a lot of research projects with the schools we work with. And, we can offer also sort of a framework of how you can be structuring activities, both on a foundational level, which includes speaking to parents, whole school insets. With primary schools, we quite often use characters to build that executive function literacy, which is great. With the sort of older schools, we would work with them, and quite a lot of the schools have posters of the 11 executive function skills, all branded with their school logos up in every poster. So we can work, with that. Yeah, so you're making it right for the school on how we can build it, and that's the foundational level. And then supporting, we've worked with schools doing PSHE lessons, how you can bring it in, or how can this fit within tutor groups quite often is where the pastoral support can be working with children. So yeah, there's lots and lots of different activities.
That sounds fun. And finally, may I ask you to just share for the listeners of the podcast your contact details? I'm sure you're going to get lots of questions. And listeners, you're very, very welcome. Belinda and I spoke about this earlier. You're very welcome. Post this podcast and ask any questions to Belinda. Get in touch. This is what's going on at your school. Bounce ideas off Belinda. What you think with your experience? How are other schools approaching this? You're very, very welcome to get in touch with Belinda and have a chat, have a good discussion, and come up with something, as Belinda said, bespoke. So, Belinda,
yeah,
your contact details so people can get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to echo that, I'm always happy to have conversations and see where anyone's at in their journey. But yeah, the best way to find us is our website, which is mindspark.org.uk. You'll find all of our details there. My email is belinda@mindspark.org.uk, so feel free to email me. We're also really active on LinkedIn. That's where we share a lot of our updates, what we're doing, feedback from schools. So you'll find us again if you look for MindSpark CIC, and also you can find me personally if you would like to connect with me as well there.
Thank you very much indeed. Listeners, thank you as always for listening to our weekly podcast. Belinda, it's been wonderful to spend a bit of time with you this morning, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, it was great. Just whizzed by.
Listeners, again, you're very, very welcome to have a conversation with Belinda. Any questions, bounce ideas off each other, it'd be great. So you're very welcome to do so. Belinda, have a great rest of the week, and thank you for joining us on this week's podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks, Matt.